was a kid growing up on Linwood and Motown, the economic epicenter in Southeast Michigan was downtown Detroit. Now it's out on Big Beaver, or it's at 12 Oaks, or it's on M59. And most of the brothers who are still on Linwood, they can't get there. And there ain't no commitment to make sure that those folk are making the connection. The reality, Devin, is that there really is no game. There's no game plan, there's no strategy, there's no commitment, there's no effort to even communicate about breaking this racial divide.
That was Hester Wheeler 15 years ago. Here's Hester Wheeler this morning.
That's fascinating. What's up, Linwood? But, you know, the reality is, so 15 years ago, African-American home ownership, for example, was at 50%. Today, it's closer to 40%. Our schools have been so severely disrupted. You see neighborhoods that have emptied out around those schools. And there's really more to the story than just the neighborhoods and the disruption in educational experiences. I mean, a slice of the African-American middle class was disrupted also, because teaching jobs and administrative jobs have disappeared. So I still don't think we're having an honest conversation, and I think we've got a bunch of newcomers who all of a sudden they understand auto insurance redlining, so now that moves to the front. My wife and I are pioneers. We ain't leaving. We're going to be here and be a part of the solution. I see more and more young African Americans who have opted into entrepreneurialism because opportunities don't exist unless they learn to do it for themselves. So you know, there's a sunny side, but there's still a slummy side, if we're honest.
Really, what he was talking about there, Sheila, 15 years ago he was largely talking about transportation.
Yeah.
And where are we 15 years later on that?
Right, and I think we need to start having city suburban conversations.
Yes.
Voter to voter, resident to resident.
Yes, ma'am.
Why can't we get to regional transportation? Why is this? What other part of the country lets a city opt out of a regional system?
Yes.
What is the basis for it? I mean, I just saw recently on TV on the other side of town in Grosse Pointe, they're going to shut schools because they'd rather shut schools than do schools of choice.
Versus open up their school district. But we're not talking about that.
Yes, and that was my point. Why isn't that a conversation?
Yes.
Why aren't Detroiters
here we are.
in,
we give them a pass.
in Grosse Pointe, parents, parents, former Detroiters who've moved to Grosse Pointe? Why are we not having that conversation? Why is that okay?
Good for you.
That's not okay.
We know why we're not having the conversation. What we have to figure out is why we still allow it to be that way. I think that at some point, we've been talking about the racial segregation of this region for decades. We've been talking about, you know, how we don't work, and we know why we don't work, but we rather not work than deal with race. All of this has to do with race.
It gets very complex, though, Mary, because it's not just white flight now that has dinged the population in Detroit. It's black people of means
That's correct.
who have also taken off.
About
the Detroit Future City report was fascinating because the conclusion of the report is that to have Detroit as a sustainable city, the best path is to rebuild the black middle class.
Absolutely.
And so that starts with jobs. You got to have schools. I remember maybe 15 years ago, someone who was running Focus Hope at that time told me that one of the biggest disappointments that he had was the realization in the Machinist Training Institute was that when somebody started go through the institute, make $70,000 a year, great, that's the dream. They moved because they wanted to get better schools. They wanted to be in a safer neighborhood. Now we have an opportunity, I think, right now in Detroit because there is investment. It's just how the investment is made, who's at the table, the community benefits portion of what's going on in the city. These are important things. The conversation has shifted from race, per se, to the old Detroit and legacy Detroit and new Detroit.
Right.
So those are the new code words.
Yeah.
We can't help but divide into teams one way or the other, no matter how it works.
I think we've got to celebrate the pioneers a lot more than we do. The saviors of this city aren't just the new arrivals and white folk. There are a lot of folk who are working at the ground level, making things happen every day, and they live in the neighborhoods. There are a lot of us who ain't gonna leave. I am suggesting we've got to be honest, and I think you can frame the conversation. We've framed it for a lot of years. We know that the things that connect us are far greater than the things that divide us, but people who don't learn to talk well with each other will never learn to work well with each other.
Which sets up pretty nicely this next, I guess, I had an epiphanal moment during that conversation 15 years ago because of spending so much time preparing for it as I did with Emory. And we got on to talking about whether there needed to be a national apology for slavery. And this was part of that dinner as well.
I want to hear what you were going to say something.
Well, I guess I end up getting to the point where, because I said it earlier, white people will never be able to know what it is to walk a mile in your moccasins.
Right.
So the point that I end up coming to is, I admire Emery King. Emery King is my friend. I care about how he feels, and I'm assuming that he knows more about the struggle of being black than I ever will. So if my friend Emery King thinks that an apology would really help us move forward in this area that I've got to assume you understand better than I, then I guess that's okay with
But
me.
the only reason you knew that, though, the only reason you knew that, Devin, no, wait. But let me just say, the only reason you knew that is because of this conversation.
I don't know who that young whippersnapper was. He had nice dark hair, though. But I think Shirley Stancato was speaking there, and she's exactly right. It only happened because we had that conversation. Interesting, Rochelle, now, the idea of an apology and the conversation about reparations is, again, on the table and being discussed again.
Well, reparations is the great roller coaster that comes up and down and back
Yes,
around
yes.
all the time. It's going to continue to do that. But the most important point and the most important thing you said, which is one of the things I admire about you, is this conversation is always this distracted sort of abstract thing that we don't really deal with as people. If you know that people that you know are hurting, you would not decide that I'm not going to deal with that. I don't care whether they're in pain. I don't care whether their families were injured for hundreds of years. I just would rather that we move on and forget that it ever happened. You can't do that if you care about someone. If we decide that we're going to know each other and care about each other and care about the children, then you have to have the conversation. That's the price you pay to make things better for someone that you care about. If we don't care about each other, if you literally do not care whether someone is upset or is hurting, then fine, you can just, well, race doesn't apply to me because I don't know what you're going through.
That's
You
why we
can't do
really
that.
can't have these conversations just in the abstract.
Right.
It's face to face, and knowing someone the way that I know Emery, that's really what became.
And I think if you tie it to an issue, I mean, something that affects everyone, transportation, I don't care what part, where you live, there's an issue about transportation, everything from insurance rates to, scooters and these other contraptions.
Because in Southeast Michigan, where we live determines if we live or die or have access to opportunities.
Right.
So I think that's so very, very true.
Right.
Somebody last week that I was talking to, Mary, about whether or not we were discussing what had happened in 15 years. Somebody said to me, well, clearly minorities, and in particular African Americans, have gained a lot of ground since then, because that's why we're seeing the rise of white nationalism. Because there's a panic setting in that we're seeing more black faces in Congress, that we're seeing more black faces in places of influence. I thought it was an interesting point. I can see by the look on your face, you're looking puzzled.
Yes,
you're not sure you're buying that.
I'm not buying it.
Well, then
because
what does explain then the rise now of what we've seen?
permission.
Right.
There you go.
Yeah.
Right.
That's it. It's acceptable now.
To not be politically correct.
people have fallen asleep in the comfort of their racist
I mean,
views. That's very true.
What people think is, it's so funny because here we're talking about how people are uncomfortable talking about race because they don't want to say the wrong thing or whatever. Then there's another extreme where they'll talk about anything. They have no censors, no internal censors. And social media is part of that. Talk radio is part of that. It's no holds barred. But I think the anonymity of social media has allowed people to just go.
And this is a radically different world today than it was 15. I mean, if you're black or red or yellow or brown, you're uncomfortable in America today.
Right.
It's radically different. Since Trayvon Martin in 2012, 500 blacks have been shot or killed by police. You've got a Black Lives Matter movement that we didn't have 15 years ago. So it's a radically different world, and we're still not comfortable trying to have
And
the
I've only got about 20, 30 seconds left, Rochelle. And as I said, though, however, 15 years ago, I'm not sure we saw the first African-American president was just around the corner.
Couldn't
so
see
some
it.
things have happened.
No, something happened, and that one thing was great, but we don't know whether that may ever happen again because we have people literally in charge who are making it okay to be hateful again. So
it's going to happen. My son says he wants to be the second.
Then unless a woman does it first.
I got to get to a break. This is Flashpoint on Local 4. Back with more right after this.